This is one of those videos I was super excited to finally be able to make. This is one of those ideas that's just been packed in the back of my mind basically for the entirety of the last year. In fact, about a year ago, I made a video that was really similar to this, but both of the point of views were on the same team. I had Formal, I had Scum. That way you could see what's happening inside the hill and what's happening on rotations. In this one, we have dual main AR point of views. So take a peek at this. We have Formal in the top right-hand side of your screen. We have CRIMSIX in the bottom left-hand side of your screen. And I sync these up, and we're going to be watching these players as they rotate from one hill to another, and basically just breaking down why one team is able to win that rotation over a different team. So let's go ahead and get it started. And as we do, I'll go on and I'll just tell you guys that the only reason why this is possible is because finally there are some different teams out there that are streaming their scrims. So throughout the entirety of last year, we really only got to see what Chicago is doing because they were the only team that did that. And does it hurt them? Does it not hurt them? That conversation has run its course. I mean, I feel like each of these players, every organization, everybody in esports has really talked about, does that help you or does that hurt you? But at this point in time, I think that most people are saying that it definitely just being out there and connecting with your audience and building your team is probably a little bit more important than what you're trying to do in terms of strategy, at least maybe when it comes to Hardpoint. Now, Search and Destroy is a little bit different. Of course, you want to hide that stuff, but when it comes to Hardpoint, everybody's trying to do the same thing. So what's the point of not streaming your scrims? Just get it out there, interact with your audience, build your brand, build your company, build your team, and we'll see where it goes from there. But right now, we have rotated over inside of the second hardpoint. It's basically a tie ball game. You see that Formal comes up off spawns right there. They do have the beneficial spawn as you're trying to approach P2. So Hugh gets a two-piece and Formal's able to try to trade him out right there. But this is one of those hills, and a lot of the hills on this map are like this, that even if you're approaching the hill from the bad side, if you're able to get in the hard point and push forward a little bit further into those choke points, you really can build up points inside of that spawn or inside of that hill, even if you're coming from the bad spawn, and that's what you saw here. So Formal actually flip spawns. They got the original P1 spawn on the opposite side. They were then, as the hard point popped, they were able to get the good spawn, and it just bounced back a couple of times. But the thing that had remained the same is that Dallas just did a phenomenal job of being inside that hard point, getting the majority of those kills. And now you can see the 50-point lead here as we're rotating towards P3 on the opposite side. So for the first time today, let's go ahead, let's stop this and just kind of explain what you just saw here. So as we were watching that, P2 was on the top side of your screen. OpTic had this initial spawn, except for they weren't able to push up, right? You have choke points here, you have choke points here, you have choke points here. If you're not able to get through those choke points and Dallas is already inside the P2 hardpoint and they get kills from these locations, it's really tough to get inside, even if you have that beneficial spawn. If you're OpTic, things were set up fairly nice from you, right? You get this initial spawn, you push into P2. If you're able to get control of P2, now you have a nasty choke point here and across the bridge, or you can just watch this door. You do have to watch the push through bricks, and also you have to watch your flank through ADOM, which is right here. But if you're able to get set up inside of P2 first, the rest of those choke points really are pretty easy to watch overall. They just weren't able to get control of P2 and actually be able to get set up. So that was the issue there inside of P2. Now as we're rotating over to P3 on rotations, if you're Dallas, you just want to make sure that you're holding down these back spawns. The likely push routes or the choke points from here, if you're inside of P3, is this vent room right here. So there's a nasty head glitch right here in which you can watch that push. You also want to make sure you're watching the push through P1 right here. Then the other places that the enemy can come, it would be best suited if you had somebody watching this mid push, but every once in a while, a team will try to sneak a player. So if they're coming from P2, if OpTic's pushing through here, try to sneak a player over here through garage and hit the back. But that's pretty tough to do, especially when you have main ARs as talented as you have in the CDL like this. Just moving forward, so we don't really have to come back here again. Once we go over to P2, this is a hard point that basically ends up being very similar to a P1. You can get time inside this P4 hard point from either side, but it's pretty contested throughout the entire time. So when it comes to this map, P1 and P4, both of these are pretty much just contested hardpoints. Where you really win these maps is by controlling the hardpoint and gaining spawns inside of P2, P3, and P5. Last but not least, when it comes to P5, the beneficial part of this is going to be, or the beneficial spawn is going to be back here. Getting inside of P5, you are closer from there, but this is another hill very similar to P2, even if you're coming from the opposite side of the map. So you're Dallas, you have these spawns. If you're able to push up and get control of P5, there are places all over this hardpoint where you can sit, and there are headies where you can combat the players coming up off of spawn here. So you get somebody watching that main push, you get somebody over here in this side room watching the push through the flank here, and there's a nice heady over here which stops this push through ADOM. So if you're able to watch that, now all of a sudden you can control P5 again from the bad side of the map, and that's what you're going to see as we go back over here and continue watching this from both point of views. So again, just going back to where we were before, we are inside of that P3 hardpoint. Dallas has control of it right now. Looked like Chicago was on a flank. They were able to get a couple kills from behind. So right now they have control, but one thing that they don't have is they don't have map control in terms of pushing out in front of those chokes, right? They're sitting inside this P3 hardpoint, but they weren't able to get out and get set up. And that's the biggest thing that hurt them right there, especially the players that were behind. So Formal did a decent job of pushing up into vent room, but what you needed to happen is the players that were behind him, whether it was Dashy, Scump, or Envoy, needed to get those kills through that mid-cut push. And then once they're able to do that, then they can push out just a little bit further, right? We talked about this time and time again when it goes back to the Modern Warfare season. That's what Atlanta FaZe did so well, is that they were able to gain map control, get inside the hard point, and then after they were inside the hard point, they were the best at gaining map control in the cuts out towards the mid-map. And that's what you saw Chicago struggle with right there, is that, sure, they were able to push it out, they were able to get control of the hard point, but once they were there, they weren't able to gain map control. So when they went down, when their team went down, they lost that positioning, and then they consequentially they lost the end of that P3 hard point. Now, with that said, they are doing a really nice job right here inside of P4. Remember, as we progressed in our drawing from P3 to P4 to P5, inside P4, this is very similar to a P1 hill. So what they're doing right now is something that you just, first of all, you don't want to count on getting time inside of P4, but you don't expect it either. And Formal looks like he ran out of bullets right there. Otherwise, he would have had that kill on Crim. But they've basically cut this lead down to 30 points, and unfortunately, they weren't able to get those kills. So had Formal been able to get a couple kills there, then they would have been able to slow down the push forward from Dallas. But now, as Chicago is about to enter this hill, you can see that Dallas members are already pushed up inside of there. And nice little picture-in-picture there as CRIMSIX was just putting shots on Formal. Formal goes back to the other side of the tank. He's able to get those shots on top of Crim, and they're able to, or he's able to win that gun battle. But this is exactly what I was talking about, right? Even though you have the dominant spawns, look at the hill. The hill has been red the entire time for Dallas Empire, just because they've only been able to get 20 points or so, but they only had a 30-point lead as P5 popped. And now, as P5 comes to a close, they were actually able to build out on their lead. So that's just a nice job of pushing forward, not being overconfident, not making stupid plays, right? If you're Dallas, it would have been super easy for them to get inside the hard point, and then once they're there, jump out from cover and try to slide cancel and challenge like a stupid ego chow. But they don't do that. And that's something that really comes to mind when I think of this Dallas squad overall, is that not only are they all insanely talented, but they play the game super smart and the way that it's supposed to be played. That right there is a tough kill from Formal. Looks like Huke was able to get that kill. And with that, just as that happened, Formal was trying to rotate back and set up back behind P5, so they had those initial spawns as it pops for P2. But now it looks like they're going to be in the same scenario that they were in on the first set of rotations, in that P2 is about to pop and they're spawning over towards P3 instead of getting that spawn behind P5. In fact, wait a second. So Formal did get that back spawn, even though they didn't have map control, and this happens sometimes. So you can see right there, see where Crim was set up, see how he's kind of outside over here beside P2. If he doesn't push out back behind those boxes, then they're not gonna block that P5 spawn. So if you're Crim, I like this rotation a little bit. Anytime you can get pushed back towards P5, the further you get pushed back that way, the more that's going to cut off those back spawn locations. So the reason why Formal got that spawn was just because CRIMSIX was on the side of P2 instead of being pushed out all the way. And now that he pushed out, they're able to get the rest of that time. And before you know it, this lead has grown to 80 points. They've got a 170 to basically 90 lead, and they're trying to win rotations here as it goes back to P3. If you're watching Formal right here, he's still getting that back P2 spawn, and the rest of his teammates are coming up behind him. And this just isn't best case scenario, right? So they have to run all the way across the map. And that's another thing that I want to point out real quick just about 4v4. There's already 15 seconds essentially off the clock. So if you don't win those initial gunfights on rotation and you don't get those spawns, the hardpoint, this P3 hardpoint is already halfway over. It's 30 seconds into this hardpoint, and they're just now starting to push forward and being able to contest a little bit, even though they are being unsuccessful, right? So you take 30 seconds to get across the map, because the first thing you have to do is you have to win the gun battles at mid-map after Dallas pushed out towards mid-map. Once you make that happen, then you got to win the gun battles actually inside the hard point, and that they weren't able to do. So they weren't able to get any of that 60 seconds inside that P3 hard point. And had they even been able to do that, they probably would have had to have fought off one more wave of spawns as Dallas got that back spawn back behind P3. So this game, it really, when it comes to thinking about why OpTic Chicago is not doing great in this one, they're just not winning those big gun battles on rotation. And that's what happens when you're talking about 4v4, right? In 5v5, you can be a little bit more aggressive. You have one more person to trade out those crucial kills. In 4v4, that's not the case. If you don't win your rotations or those critical gun battles on rotations, you're probably not going to get those spawns. And because of that, the game is over. You get a 250 to 105 victory. You got 24 and 15 out of Shotzi. You got 29 and 19 out of Crim. Illy was 32 and 19 with 11 kills in the objective. Unfortunately, I can't see exactly what the OpTic guys did, but this was pretty much a beatdown, right? So on this one, guys, this video took quite a bit longer than what my normal videos do. So if you could, please share it, leave a like. If you're new around here, make sure you hit that subscribe button. This is what I do every single day throughout the entirety of the Black Ops Cold War season. So make sure you go ahead and you hit that subscribe button. Leave a like. It really helps out the channel. And with that, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. We will see you in tomorrow's upload.